I'm Jennie Ivey, and when Pat and Kathy first came up with the idea of these lifelong learning classes, they asked me if I would teach a class about writing. And so for various reasons, mostly the election, I work early voting at the election office. This semester would have been the first time I could do that. But of course we are in COVID now, so what I'm doing this afternoon is just a little teaser about a class we hope to teach in the fall, assuming that we've all had our vaccines. The title of the class was Pat's idea, and it's called How to Write Your Own Obituary, and I added the little subtitle, How to Write Your Own Obituary and some other stuff. So it will be a 5-week class with the intention of you leaving your heirs things that will make their life easier on the unlikely event of your death, and also tell them what they need to know about you that maybe they don't even know. So our first class is going to be an actual obituary class, and Pat and I came in a little early today and met with Jill Horner. We're here at Hooper, Houston and Horner Funeral Home because we thought that was the perfect setting to talk about writing obituaries. And so just chatting with Jill, and she was so interesting and informative, we said, hey, would you be in the video? So I'm going to interview her for the video. So this is Jill Horner, and she told me something I did not know. My very first paid writing job, way back in the early 1970s, I worked as an intern for the Nashville Banner. And our first, what you do first as an intern for the Nashville Banner in the newsroom is you go in early in the morning, and there's this big stack of death notices from all the funeral homes, and all the interns are fighting over the death notices because nobody wants to get a child. Nobody wants to do an obituary about a victim of violence, and so we're all trying to get the oldest people we can before the people that come in later getting the death notices. Well, apparently it doesn't work that way anymore. So I have found out from Jill just a few minutes ago that the funeral home actually writes the obituaries. So, and then she told me a lot of stuff that really is interesting and important. So I'm just going to kind of ask her questions and let her talk. So Jill, just walk us through what happens when you have a death and how you deal with a family and how we finally see an obituary on your website and in the newspaper.
Well, really every family is different. There's no one way to do it. But typically, the biggest challenge I think is having this time crunch where you've got 2 or 3 days to really do a lot of things, make a lot of decisions. Not the best time in terms of emotionally, a lot of times when the death is sudden especially. So it's hard to think through all that. So writing an obituary, though, is kind of healing. It's part of the healing process as we gather information, not just information about the times and family members and all that, but really what you want to do is capture something personal and make the obituary personal about that person. That's a challenge to do with a grieving family and in a time situation where you don't have a lot of time to think through it. So I think this is a great idea for everybody who's comfortable doing so to write your own obituary. You can put whatever you want to in there that somebody else might not even think to put. And plus you can give it some time to really think through what kind of message you want to leave, because that's important. And there's a lot of different reasons to write an obituary. Of course, there's the newspaper, and that's sort of factual kind of a thing with a little personal information in it. We put obituaries on our website, and they're there forever, basically. So if there's somebody who does want to research, 100 years from now, who knows what that'll look like, but somebody looking back, they can actually find a record pretty easily. So there's that, and then sometimes people read obituaries as part of the service, and you might put something a bit longer, a little bit more personal in that setting than you would in a newspaper. So there's a lot of different applications for an obituary, and so the closer you are to that person, whether it's you or somebody you're very close to, the better results you're going to have. So
tell us about paying the Herald Citizen for an obituary?
Well, it is a revenue source for the Herald, as it is for a lot of papers. Didn't used to be that way. They used to be to do that free, but I guess, just because
Times are tough.
Times are tough. And so not just the Herald, but a lot of local papers around here charge. The larger papers in larger cities can charge a whole lot for an obituary. Typically, if we do that, we'll reduce it some so that it's not, to reduce the cost of doing that. But again, it's one time. It's one thing you do one time in your life, and so and it does create a permanent record. So there's a lot of good reasons to do that.
Okay. All right. Good. Anything else you want our viewing audience to know about obituaries?
Well, it is a healing thing. Sometimes, lots of times, people will write their own, or they'll come in with an obituary that, especially if you had time to sort of prepare for the death, and people have had time to really think through that. They can be very humorous, which I think is great.
Great.
And they can be informative, and basically if you do your own or somebody close to you, you can say whatever you want to. So,
True
I would
enough.
encourage it. And it is one thing, one way, I guess, you can kind of face the reality of death, because it is part of life. It's going to happen to all of us, more than likely, and very likely. So, I would just encourage people to sit down and do that.
Oh, would you give us how much it cost from approximate local and bigger city?
The Herald Citizen, I would say the average obituary costs about $100 probably. The longer ones are more than that. In a place like Nashville, the Tennessean, just a normal size obituary can run $1,000.
Okay.
And that's typical of larger cities. So.
An extra for the photograph.
Yes. Yes.
All right. Anything else you want from Jill?
Oh, thank you, Jill.
Thank you.
Yeah, we
Thank
thank
you
you.
so
Okay, before I knew that Jill was going to be part of this video, which I'm so grateful that she was, I wanted just to talk a little bit about obituaries. So because in the fall this will be a 5-session class. Obviously, we're not going to go 5 weeks talking about obituaries. We are likely to do that on the first session. So what I know about obituaries, other than having written them for the Nashville Banner, was I wrote both of my parents' obituaries. And my parents both had a very long, drawn-out cancer death, which was horrible, but it did give us time to ask them, what they wanted, to be sure we had the dates right, all that stuff that you really want to get right. They were telling me downstairs, you get one shot at making the obituary right, one shot. And so, if you don't write your own obituary, somebody else is going to do it for you. So, to me, that's reason enough to sort of kind of get started on this. Okay, we ask why obituaries are important, and there's a lot of answers to that. Obituaries, as Jill said, bring comfort to the family. They bring closure to the family. But obituaries are also a historical record of your life. And so, to tell when you were born, and you can go ahead and fill that in. And clearly, you can't fill in the death date. But you can certainly fill in where you were born, what you want to say about your parents or your grandparents, the list of your siblings, the other important relatives you think should be listed in your obituary. If you want to include your education, do that. Maybe when you graduated from high school and where, but maybe your kids don't know that, or whoever's writing your obituary. If you want to talk about post-secondary education, well, where did you go to school? What was your degree in? You know it, but they might not know it, but they want to know it. So just as history, nothing but history, an obituary is important. Jill was telling me that the number of people contacting them every single day of the year for genealogical research is astonishing. And so you're, in addition to being history, and we know genealogy is history, But it's important for anybody that's trying to go back, that your obituary, the more it tells, the easier that makes people that are doing historical or genealogical research. So all emotion aside, history's important. So obituary is important. We will talk in the class about what should be included in your obituary. And again, if your obituary is on the website of the funeral home, that's part of the cost of your funeral. If you want the obituary in the paper, as Jill said, that's going to cost you more. And the way a newspaper works is the bigger a space you buy, the more it costs you. So we will talk about how to write a concise obituary to include everything you want included, but leave out, we like to say in the writing business, we're going to learn how to omit needless words so that your obituary is informative, but also tightly written. We also will talk about what you might not want to put in your obituary and save for some other something. And the other 4 classes, after we get finished with class number 1, the obituary class, the other 4 classes are going to be what, you should write some other stuff for your heirs in addition to your obituary. And that's what those other classes will be about. So we'll talk about, yes, this should go in your obituary, or you might say, well, maybe you should put that somewhere else. If you want to say, why, I made the best biscuits of anybody on earth, put it in there. If you go, one time he got a 12-point buck, or one time he made a hole-in-one, or whatever you want, put it in there. But maybe your heirs are not going to know to do that. So again, that's why we want you to write your own. I was talking to Jill about the name. So for many years, and I don't know if it's because I used to work for the Banner, but for many years I have cut out obituaries that I thought were interesting, and I wish I could put my hands on that file. Perhaps by the time I teach this class in the fall, I'll be able to find it, but I read the Herald Citizen obituaries every time they come out, and oh my goodness, they're just wonderful. It's just wonderful, wonderful reading. And so I asked her if a person's name is William, but they go by Possum, do you put Possum in the obituary? And she said, we urge people, when you are putting your obituary online or you're putting your obituary in the newspaper, if people know you by Possum, then put Possum in there. Because, you want people to know you're dead, they better recognize you by that name. So we'll have a little fun with that maybe. Another thing we'll talk about is a photograph. And we all know that text with a photograph always gets better attention than text without a photograph. And I've heard so many people say, well, that old man was 89 years old when he died, and he ran a picture when he was a private in the Army in World War II. And I go, so what? It's his picture. So we'll talk about what picture do you want? Do you want a picture from your senior picture from your high school yearbook? Do you want your picture the age you are now while you're writing this obituary? What do you want? That is your choice. I would probably advise that you not put a picture of you as a young child, because that's weird. But certainly that is something to consider. And when you decide upon the photo you want to go with your obituary, go ahead and get that taken care of. And we're going to talk, one of the things we're going to talk about in this 5-week class is, once you've got all this stuff together, once you've done all this work, where do you put it to make sure the person that needs to know where it is knows where it is? And so we'll talk about that too. Jill told you about the Herald Citizen obituary policy. When my mother died in 2005 in Nashville, and she had lived in Nashville for decades, and there was still a Banner then, I think, but I think there was. So her obituaries went in both the Nashville papers. She was originally from Little Rock, Arkansas, so the obituary went there. And because I had lived in Cookeville for so long, it also went in the Herald Citizen. So it was quite shockingly expensive It was a funeral expense we had not really budgeted to have that obituary appear, particularly with a picture in so many newspapers. So we'll bear that in mind too. Okay, that's it for the obituary session 1. Okay, the last 4 sessions, because we have months to figure this out, they will be like morphing and you know, growing and being edited and being changed. But what I'm thinking right now, and again, this class is for you. So, and this class is not a lecture class. I do not teach lecture classes. So this class will be like give and take and sharing with each other and questions and answers. And so it's going to be a very, you know, back and forth kind of class. As some of you know, before COVID, I teach a class at church called Mining Your Memories. And we're going to use some of what I've learned works from that class in this class, but this is not a like carbon copy of Mining Your Memories. We're going to do things a little bit differently here. If you're in my Mining Your Memories class, you'll probably be fine being in this class too. You won't say, I already know that. I think, you know, this is really going to be something different than the Mining Your Memories. But so we've got the obituary out of the way, you know, that's written and that's put in the special file folder. So the other things I'm going to encourage you to write are things like this. Your heirs want to know more about you than just when you were born, where you went to school, what your degrees are in, what's the name of your great-grandmother. They want to know that, maybe, but they really want to know about you. And so we're going to do some writing exercises using prompts to encourage you to write about yourself. And so like in Mining Your Memories, we use 1-word prompts, but I think for this class, I'm just gonna like have a question and I'm gonna encourage you to go home and write about that question. So like I might say, okay, for next week, write about your first day of first grade. Write about the time you won or lost a ball game because you missed the foul shot or you made the foul shot. Write about your wedding day. Put some of your favorite, if you're a cook, put some of your favorite recipes in this file folder. Make a list for your heirs of your favorite books or your favorite movies and tell them why those books and movies are special to you. Do you have special skills? Are you a woodworker? Are you a car mechanic? Are you a gardener? Are you a chef? Are you a fabulous golf player? Whatever your skill might be, and we all have skills, I would encourage you to write how you became interested in that skill and how you got good at it. And you might say, you know, here is how I found is the best way to change the oil in the car. I mean, you think, oh, well, that's just silly. You can find that on the internet. Well, you know, consider that your children or your grandchildren might want to say, oh, first thing you do is learn how to pop the hood up, prop it up, you know. Don't ever disparage anything you know as something the generations behind you might not want to know, because let's just assume they do. Let's assume they do. We will also talk about tools for doing this. Is it better to do this with a pen and a notepad? Is it better to do it on a word processor and print it off? Is it best to do it on a word processor and send it to the cloud, which would not be my choice, although it is a choice, you know, in addition to other choices. So we'll talk about tools for, or do you want to make an audio video recording of yourself? And I think that's awesome. What would I give to have my parents in their last weeks of life? As horrible as it was, what would I give? We never, and they died before phones could do what they can do now. But we have the technology now to do that. So I would encourage you to also consider leaving an audio video for your heirs. One of the reasons people don't do the things I'm talking about doing is inertia. oh, well, I'll do it tomorrow. You know, I'm feeling good today. I'm feeling good. No need to write my obituary today. Well, you know, as we say, you never know. So we are going to talk about trying to overcome inertia, to overcome procrastination, to make this kind of thing a habit. I talked to some friends the other day and told them I was making this video, and I'm not going to name her, but she says, well, so-and-so, her husband, we were going to do that while we're isolated with COVID, but we hadn't done it yet. And I said, well, you cleaned out your closet. All these things she'll say, I cleaned out my file cabinet, I cleaned out my closet, I cleaned out the storage room. And I said, go ahead and do this now. Well, no, I need to. So we're going to talk about doing it, okay? And then we're going to also talk about the role photographs have in these records of your life. And of course, photographs are important, but we also don't want to overcome this package you're preparing. We don't want it to be 50 photo albums either. So we'll talk about how to work photos in with this without the photos being the overwhelming part of the story. And then last but not least, where are you going to put this after you're done with it? And hopefully you'll never be done with it till you're like on your deathbed, because every day something else happens. So, you know, if you go, oh man, that was like so interesting. And so, you know, that happens to me, and I can write a newspaper column about it. And I told my kids, if you throw my newspaper columns away, I've got 1,000 newspaper columns. You better read every one of them when I'm gone. You better. But it is important, and I really, not to be overly dramatic, but I think this kind of thing needs to be stored either in a safety deposit box or in a fireproof safe, or you know, some kind of place where somebody who's going to be around to take care of your final wishes knows where it is. And so that will be part of our class too. So that's it.
Great. Thank you, Jennie.